Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the webinar presentation. It's 4 o'clock on the dot, and welcome one and all to Energetic Consulting's COVID-19 Solar and Energy Storage Industry Update and Business Support webinar. We have people pouring onto the webinar as we speak. The numbers are bumping up high. We've had 555 registrations before the event, and we already have heading towards a couple of hundred people already on the webinar, and that number is increasing by the moment. So my name is Russell French. I'm the founder of Energetic Consulting, which is a marketing and sales and business management support agency, which has been in existence since 2014. I have been the director of Enphase Energy, bringing the company to Australia in 2013, director at SunGrow, director of strategy and marketing, and I'm in my 16th year in the solar industry. We have some incredible partners involved in the event. We have event partners, the Clean Energy Council with Kane Thornton, coming on board very, very quickly to support the event and getting fully behind us. We have the Smart Energy Council with John Grimes and Wayne Smith getting behind the event. And of course, all of our favorites, the Solar Cutters with Jack Long and Costa getting behind the event. And all of the event partners have been crucial in getting this event out to the industry. The outcome that I hope to achieve today with the webinar is basically to provide support during time of great distress in our industry. And I'll mention all of our sponsors in a moment, but I just want to say that I was self-employed for 10 years straight, and I have been self-employed on and off after that. And I know the trials and tribulations of business and what it takes, especially small business. I have had more 2 a.m. waking times than anyone I've ever met in my life. And I'm sure, well, you are all in that same boat. I know it's extremely difficult when you're under stress and duress and needing some sense of support so you're not isolated during this really difficult time. We've gathered an incredible lineup of presenters today for you. Many of these faces you will know, and we may have a surprise face you don't know. So of course we have Kane Thornton, the Chief Executive of the Clean Energy Council on board, who will do our opening presentation. We have Warwick Johnston, Managing Director of SunWiz, and of course PV Cell, and now my co-founder in Sunfluence, which is a new marketing and support services agency that is launching. We have Bruce Hall, who is our surprise guest, who is outside of the solar industry. I have known Bruce for well over 10 years. He's been a crucial part of my business success. He has supported over 1,200 businesses in his time, has been a senior finance professional and supported businesses during the bushfire disasters that we've gone through in conjunction with state governments. Bruce is an incredible dynamo. We have John Grimes, who will be doing a brief promotion of an upcoming event and a brief word from the Smart Energy Council. And we have Dean Mannix, incredible solar industry sales trainer, marketing expert, and extraordinaire on an international scene. And we have Durmus Yildiz, Managing Director of BayWa, been in the solar industry for longer than I have, and a friend of mine, and an incredible presence within the solar industry. Okay, quick word on our sponsors. Fronius. Keisha Naronho never ceases to amaze me. She always gets behind everyone's events. She was the first to put her hand up and say yes without question to get behind this event as a platinum sponsor. Durmus from BayWa got right behind us. George Faney and Tim Feng at Yingli didn't bat an eyelid to get behind as a platinum sponsor. Zygmunt Niemann and Peter Hamilton over at Solis, inverters, got right behind the event. Michael Rutt, Darren Hoffman, Jessica and Adele over at SMA wonderful supporters of the industry got behind the event. Of course, John and Wayne at the Smart Energy Council also came on as a platinum sponsor. Kathleen Catchpole from Fimer. Fimer acquired ABB Solar, as you would all know. Now, we had a couple of rescuers as it looked like we weren't going to hit our $5,000 target, and our target, all proceeds going to St Vincent de Paul. Basically, any expense related to this webinar I have incurred through energetic consulting, all money, every last penny will go to Vinnies. Guy Olian swept in at the last moment from Energy Ease Finance and helped us out hit our target, as did Julie McConaughey from Eco Generation. She swooped in at the last moment. Now, since then, we also had Philip Crotty from LGChem come on board as a gold sponsor. We just had literally 5 minutes before I got on board, we had Huawei come on board as a platinum sponsor as well. Nigel Morris and Stefan Jarnason are great supporters of the solar industry, come on from Solar Analytics. Grant Berendorf, an old colleague of mine, who I knew back in the Enphase Energy days, came on with AC Solar Warehouse as a silver sponsor. And a very old friend of mine and colleague, the country manager of OpenSolar, Micah Goebel, has come on as a silver sponsor. Okay, there we go. Incredible, guys. Now, I am going to hand over to Kane Thornton for his opening remarks and presentation from the CEC, Clean Energy Council. Kane is the Chief Executive of the Clean Energy Council, the peak body for the renewable energy storage industry in Australia. Kane has more than a decade's experience in energy policy and leadership and development of the renewable energy industry. Kane has advocated for and helped design policies that have been critical to the industry and continues to be an active political advocate, presenter and media spokesperson. He has had roles previously for Hydro Tasmania and Executive Officer of the Renewable Energy Generators Association. Kane, I could go on for another 10 minutes with all your accolades. I'm just going to hand over to you. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my share here and hand over to Kane.
Great, and thanks very much, Russell, and hi everyone. Can I just firstly just acknowledge Russell and the extraordinary work that he's put in over the past days and weeks in bringing this all together, and also obviously to the sponsors that have gotten behind it. It's a great lineup, and thank you. Look, I guess first and foremost, unfortunately, we're holding this at a moment of crisis, really, for the entire industry here in Australia and indeed globally. And I'm going to start really, I guess, by just some overarching comments, and that's, I guess, first and foremost for all of us, I think, is the health, safety, and well-being of obviously ourselves, but I think more importantly our workers, our customers, and the community. You know, I think we've only just started to see the very real material physical effects of this virus. I think there's a lot worse to come as the numbers continue to swell, and doing what we can as an industry to protect the people that we come in contact with is absolutely critical. I've got there a link to some of the resources that the CEC has put together, and indeed I expect some of the other speakers will touch on this. There's obviously a whole range of measures that we should be taking as an industry when we're out on a job, when we're working with customers, etc. And there's a whole range of resources that the CEC has provided, particularly to the installer community, given they're at the front line often of that interaction. I guess it goes without saying, but obviously there's a whole range of measures that have been put in place already, and I think we can probably expect that those measures are going to continue to tighten and further restrictions be put in place by governments in days and certainly weeks ahead. I think one of the critical definitions that we've been following closely is in relation to an essential service. It's pretty clear that as governments continue to tighten their restrictions, definitions of what is an essential service or indeed what's a discretionary activity become very, very important. And I know this has been a very confusing issue for industry. certainly different governments, different levels of governments have put in place different restrictions that are interpreted and understood differently. You know, what is clear is that energy in its broader definition is an essential service, but that definition in and of itself varies certainly from state to state. And we've been working hard with governments right around the country to see if we can get as much clarity on that as possible. What we've seen as governments continue to focus on encouraging people to avoid discretionary activities. Now, you know, I think what's pretty clear is if you're undertaking some maintenance on a solar system, then that's probably a pretty important activity. If you're kicking out for a new installation, then it's a bit less clear. And I think by some definitions, you'd say that is discretionary. It is unclear at the moment. It's subject to judgment. Again, I urge people to follow the guidelines, show, you know, be cautious, be careful, and I think watch this space. I think there'll be some more information and clarity on this essential service definition in hours and days ahead. But I think, you know, clearly even the measures that have been put in place already have had a massive impact on our industry. There's obviously a lot of constraints already in terms of how we go about attending sites, interacting with customers that are already in place. And so, as I said, some of those measures are likely to increase in weeks ahead. All of that translates obviously to a really challenging time for this industry, for the solar industry. We've obviously seen, and I'm sure we'll hear from Warwick and other speakers, the impact this is having and is likely to impact on customers and therefore demand for solar power and indeed household battery in days and weeks ahead. All of that means, unfortunately, a really difficult time for the industry, and I know many of you are having to make some very hard decisions in relation to your business and how it gets through the coming period. I know a lot of people have already wound back their business activity and facing the really difficult decision of being forced to close your business. Hopefully that's only for a short period of time, but I guess the future is pretty uncertain as we sit here at the moment. I guess the better news is that there is a range of measures in place already, and we expect more measures to be announced, particularly from governments, to support industry through this period. We all know that our industry and rooftop solar and household batteries can play a massive role when the inevitable economic stimulus is returned. And again, we don't know exactly when that will be. We hope that the industry and some level of activity can continue over this period, but we know governments are going to lean into stimulating the economy when that time comes. And we all know our industry can play a massive role in that. A lot of our jobs are out in rural and regional parts of the country. We know that in doing that, we are a major stimulus to the economy. We do help people save on their power bills, and I think all that together means that our industry will be a real priority for that economic stimulus that will come. This is an area that the CEC is working hard on. We've already written to governments, putting forward a whole package of measures. A lot of those relate to the existing programs, things like the Solar Victoria program down in Victoria that governments can use to really ratchet industry up quite quickly. It's fair to say that more immediately government programs are focused on really the survival of business and support for workers in this crisis period. I'm not going to go through all of them, and in fact I'll give you a reference to the CEC website where we're keeping an updated catalogue of all of the government support measures that they're putting in place to help businesses, and I expect many of these will be of interest to those of you joining this webinar. There are a range of federal government measures that we've already seen announced. These include increase and change the instant asset tax write-off measures, support for apprentices and trainees, and also lending support. Now, most of these are in the spirit of helping businesses as they look to grow and expand into the future. But I think the focus of the federal government is now very much shifting to helping businesses survive. We've seen reporting, and there's no clarity as yet. They were expecting an announcement in coming hours or days, but expecting the federal government to follow the lead of other governments around the world in putting programs in place to essentially pay some portion of salaries of workers who have been stood down during this period. And I know certainly for many of you, having to lay off workers is probably the hardest and most difficult, and indeed the last thing that you want to do. And hopefully that government program can allow those workers to be supported during this transition and allow your business some level of easing of the financial burden through the inevitable slowdown. In combination, there's a whole range of state government programs. Now, each state has a different package, and again, I'll refer you to the CEC website where we've catalogued and listed each of the different state government packages. We're seeing new announcements almost hourly at the moment, which is fantastic. The state governments are generally focusing on a few areas. One of those is payroll tax relief, so deferral of payroll tax, which I expect is helpful for businesses in the industry. And they've also got a range of measures to support workers being laid off, and they're many and varied, including also support programs for apprentices and trainees. So take a look at those depending on what state you're in. The other thing to notice is, I guess, a fair bit of discussion at the moment around rental relief. So if your business is renting your office building or other buildings or property, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about providing rental relief. And so again, I expect this will vary in each state, but I expect there'll be some level of support for your business in that area in the coming weeks. As I said, really, I think we're starting to see governments focus on supporting workers and helping businesses during the shutdown phase. I think, we're all watching announcements. Federal government, state governments are meeting daily to continue to review things. And I think we can expect that the restrictions and the shutdown are only heading in one direction at the moment. And thankfully, I think government support programs are recognizing that and increasing. I guess from a CEC perspective, our team is all working remotely and continuing to do as much as we can to support the industry, installers, and our members. I think it's critically important we all stay up to date. There is a lot of change, a lot of information flowing around. We're working hard to make sure industry is kept abreast of that. And again, I think today's webinar is a really important step in that. There's the link to the website for the CEC, where we're sharing all of those resources as they come to hand. But I think the other one is to look out for each other. This is a really difficult time. I think our industry, for better or worse, we've ridden the solar coaster up and down over many, many years. We've been through tough times. I know many people are used to booms and busts. Unfortunately, I think this is certainly one of the more challenging and more savage periods that we've been through. And I think it's really important to stay connected, to look out after each other. There's a lot of tools out there to help people manage their own well-being, manage their mental health during this period. Reach out to each other. Are you okay is a powerful set of words that I think we can all use more often during this period, and keep an eye on each other as we make it through, because it is going to be a really challenging time. It is already, but I think we all know that our industry has a very big and a very bright future. We're in it because we believe in it. A virus doesn't change that. There is an inevitability about our country and indeed the world moving to renewable energy, and solar power and household batteries have an enormous role to play. They've got a massive future, and I think if we stick together, we can make it through this as well as we can. So thanks very much again, Russell. Really appreciate the opportunity, and back to you.
Okay, I'll just unmute myself. Thank you very much, Kane. Wonderful to have the Clean Energy Council there to support the industry. and provide the latest up-to-date information. I'm just going to remind everyone that down the bottom of your screen, if you hover down at the very bottom, you should be able to see a Q&A button. The Q&A button is there if you click on it to ask questions of the panelists, not during the presentations, but at the very end, we're going to have a Q&A panel where we will answer your questions, but only if you ask them. So please put your questions in there. I will gather those up and ask the panelists at the very end. We currently have 330 people logged on, so we have a great audience. I'm going to introduce Warwick Johnston. Certainly doesn't need an introduction. We all know Warwick. But Warwick has been in the solar industry since 2005. Warwick and I worked together back in those days. He founded SunWiz in 2009 to grow the solar industry by improving the operations of solar businesses. Warwick is my co-founder of Sunfluence, which is launching soon, and recently established and implemented the industry-leading processes for solar companies through a unique digital platform that will be coming out through Sunfluence. So stay tuned. Warwick, over to you, and thank you for your presentation.
Thanks again, Rusty. Echo Kane's comments on appreciating you putting this together for everybody. I am going to not show everyone my desktop and just chuck into the presentation. So Australia's solar corona, and forgive the pun there. I'm going to be talking about what's happening with volumes in the market. It's my area of expertise, and we're seeing here a snippet of the volumes for March, noting that this was prepared on Friday, so it only includes Thursday's data. So this is incomplete data for March, and you're seeing there in the grey shaded area the monthly volume of installations happening across the country, and that's in the grey shaded area, and then on a state-by-state basis as we go down. Now, what's interesting here is because we've don't have a full month's worth of data, we are probably likely to see a new record set for March, if not, then not far off it. So a new record set at a national level. So that's what's happening at the installation/STC registration, which is of course the other end of the pipeline to what's happening at sales and lead volume. And what I'm hearing anecdotally is that people are both pulling out all stops to try and get these installations done before some sense of highly likely shutdown. We're not sure how it will affect people on the roofs, and whether they can continue to install, and if they can find ways to do so without going into people's homes, for example. But regardless of that, and whether solar installers are treated as essential service workers, then it may still be difficult for solar companies to get equipment shipped to them or to pick up, etc. So some challenges coming in regardless of what happens with shutdown and the treatment of essential services. But for me, this is about how do we innovate our way around the obstacles that come in front of us, recognizing these are unprecedented times, but also that the approaches that we can take here can be useful for the months and years ahead. And those suggestions can actually reshape how we do business, just as Corona is reshaping how some of our culture. So that was the end of the pipeline, the STC registration. Here we're looking at the lead generation. And so what I'm plotting here is the Google Trends data for searches for solar in Australia. And I've marked here in these dots, this is on a weekly basis across the years since 2017. These dots are where that last week, sorry, the in March was into Google search trends. So as you can see there, this more or less trends as with the solar installation volume that happens across a year, and you're seeing a particular dive, and solar searches for solar understandably at their lowest that they have been for quite some time. understandable. People aren't necessarily thinking about solar power systems, though it's interesting. Of course, they're consuming a lot more electricity these days because they are home, and that's an opportunity for people to be talking. Perhaps these people are sitting at home bored, twiddling their thumbs, and wishing somebody would call and bring. That's the opportunity to bring their attention to solar power. So it's certainly the opportunity is there. Whether you can deliver on that opportunity at this point in time has greater question. What's interesting though, when we have surveyed the market, and one of John's webinars picked up on this as well, that some solar companies are practically closing their doors, if not closing their doors, and I'll run through some tips which can help you avoid that. I spoke with one who relies exclusively on looking for lead generation, and clearly that business model is shot. But how can they adapt? They need to adapt or die. At the other end, we see some companies that have slightly reduced leads, but they have the increased volume of revenue because people are paying more for solar now, and perhaps they're adding batteries as well. So this is why we're seeing a two-speed solar economy. In those words. So what can you do? Question mark, can you get on the roof to actually fulfill? And I'll leave that to you to invent ways of doing that successfully. Obviously that will have to adapt as the days, weeks and months play out. Emergency measures to stop your business from having to shut the doors. Some ideas which I've floated, which have met with weren't being well received. Jump on the phone. That company that was going to close because they couldn't door knock, they hadn't quite thought of the idea of, hey, we could call all of our existing customers and not exhausting customers, existing customers, to say, hey, have you thought about upgrading? Now's a smart time to upgrade because you're going to be stuck at home for a little while. They could call all of their prospective customers who never proceeded with them, and a sizable proportion of those won't have got a solar system from anyone. So they're people you've already got the contact details, some relationship established with, etc. And those kind of measures can at least quickly drive some sales and potential installations. I mentioned what happens now will change culture and change the way that businesses are run. And the businesses that can switch to a remote sales environment obviously can cut their costs and overhead and increase efficiency of staff compared to those people who are sending people out into the field. So if you're going to switch to phone sales, then you have to do that well, and you need the platform to support that, and you need the ability to sell over the phone. And thankfully, Dean Mannix will probably be running through some of those strategies in a moment. The platform I'm going to mention there is OpenSolar. It was actually built for remote sales and is exceptionally useful for phone sales, because the founder of OpenSolar built SunGevity, one of America's largest solar companies, to do exactly that. And there's a webinar on Wednesday that we're running to show you how to sell remotely. Other things you need to address are automating your customer service so that your customer service doesn't slip and your ratings dive. And also improve your customer proposals, because a lot of people rely on salespeople to check out what people's visual responses are, what their customers are thinking and saying, and explain this in more terms or less, leaving a fairly bare-bone proposal. But that doesn't work so well anymore. Of course, you can sell batteries. People are perhaps feeling a bit more vulnerable and may want to have that backup power. Promoting solar as a great use of the instant tax write-off for businesses, as a great option for increasing cash flow when financed, both for household and businesses, are both smart things to be doing. And that's why I think that solar is in some way recession-proof. If we can just get out there on roofs to deliver it, then what we're going to be doing is increasing the amount of money in people's pockets. And I think this is something which is about rebuilding the economy as well. And there are ways to get commercial customers, and there's some urgency about those instant tax write-offs as well. So how can you get them? The number one way is ask your residential customers for commercial leads, and then SunWiz also has a service in that area. Train your staff in sales, train them in software, and get technical training as well. And we have a a link there contains a blog for all of the information that we've presented here, plus a few other ideas. Get in touch with your staff and ask them what they think you should be doing, ask how they can help, etc. Employees, volunteer, what do you think your boss can do? I think we're all in this together, and there's going to be some pretty potentially useful ideas around there, and look at where we can cut waste as well. This has been covered, I think, both by Kane, and it might also have been by John in previous webinars. Having good policy and procedures on social distancing. I've seen installers working in pairs, not rotating their who they're working with, just to minimise the spread, potential spread and quarantining effect that a COVID scare could have, and of course treating solar as an essential service. I will leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Warwick. Always an incredible supporter of the industry and have the latest up-to-date information. Now, I'm just going to remind everyone on the webinar today, we have 347 people logged in right now. Down the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. Please don't forget to ask your questions. The people involved in the webinar today are often very hard to get a hold of, and you have direct access to ask them questions right now. I know it can be very difficult to get them on the phone outside of this arena, so please do ask your questions, keep those coming in for the Q&A session at the end. Now, and I'm just going to remind my panelists, we do have a tight schedule, so we have 10 minutes each. We're just going to have to keep to that at the moment. Bruce Hall is our next presenter. I've known Bruce for over 10 years. He's an incredible supporter of business, an amazing strategist, a finance professional. The government has, the state governments have employed him and his businesses before to get bushfire business victims back on their feet. Bruce has incredible strategies around stress for those businesses and also a financial perspective. He is highly experienced in disaster recovery and did spend the last 3.5 years working with those businesses, especially in Victoria around King Lake and Marysville with the impacts of bushfires. And over the last 14 years has worked with over 1,200 businesses, small and medium enterprise across a diverse range of sectors. And he has been an amazing support in my businesses over the years. Bruce, I'm going to hand over to you for your presentation.
Thanks, Ross. Share my screen. All right, folks, look, as Russ said, I spent 3.5 years working up in Marysville and King Lake, and my presentation is just based around what I found there, some of the issues, and also sort of what worked, what are some of the solutions to what we're facing. Just get straight into it. Look, what I'd say to you right from the start, we've never been in anything like this before. It's like the 1990 recession and SARS on steroids. We really don't know where it's going to go. And we're probably in the phase of the journey. We're right at the shock phase. We really don't know what reality is at the moment. And probably this is the phase when you can make some shocking decisions, when you're highly emotional, all that sort of thing. Decision making can be really, really difficult. At some point, probably in a couple of months, things will stabilise. That doesn't mean it gets better, but it will become the norm. The government support will be out there in the main. We'll sort of have an idea of what's available, those sort of things. And that's generally, once things start to stabilise, businesses tend to reach out for support. And I'll talk more about that as we go through. When we get into the recovery phase, that will be different for every business. Some businesses will get into the recovery phase maybe in a few months. Other businesses will be a lot longer than that. But what I'd say to you, look, the journey is going to have ups and downs. I saw it all the time up in Marysville and King Lake. You think you're going well, and then something happens and you feel like you're back to square one. But, the key thing is to always remember what I've got down the right. It's not just you. Look, everybody is in the same boat. Some of the things, the factors that I saw come through in the bushfire work, it can be really hard to make good decisions and think through issues. Concentration, being able to concentrate when you're highly stressed is exceptionally difficult. Even simple tasks can take longer. There was one chap I knew who was a very experienced, good businessman. I knew him before the fires, and he described it to me. He said, Bruce, it's like trying to think through quicksand. And that happens because you've got so much going on that the ability to sort of really get to the nub of the issue and think logically about it is very hard. I just wanted to mention that cortisol depletion. It was something we saw happen about 12 months in, and particularly with fellas. And what that was, we tend to sort of just, really push the envelope, work insane hours, trying to get things going. And that takes a toll on the body. And at some point you get what's called cortisol depletion and you hit a wall. Why I mention that is really, the person you really need to look after is yourself. Make sure, despite what everything's going on, you do get to take some time out. Otherwise, down the track, you'll pay a price for it. Support, seek support. Look, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Don't be afraid to go to someone and say, look, I'm really struggling here. I need someone to talk to. Communication's critically important. Some of the other speakers have spoken about that already, but, communicating with your existing customers, getting in touch with them, but communicating with lenders, communicating, with suppliers, all that sort of thing. Don't go to ground, communicate. You'll find through this process, your accountant will play a critical role. Make sure you've got a good accountant because they can act as an advocate for you. They can help you work through issues. They can, take your ideas and put them into numbers for you, that sort of thing. Mentors I'll cover off in a little while. You've got your peak bodies who are out there trying to sift through all the data the government's putting out, which is changing by the hour. But what I'd say to you, whatever support is out there, have a look at it and don't self-exclude. I saw that a fair bit in King Lake where people would say, oh, I've never qualified for that. And in fact, they did. You just had to present it the right way. You just had to work through the issues with them. So don't self-exclude. If something's out there, have a look at it and see how you can fit the criteria. When you get the recovery phase, what I just put here, the mindset is particularly important. Trying to plan positively for the future. You can't do it when you're highly stressed. You really need to be in a settled space. That doesn't mean the world's beautiful, but in a settled space to think about the possibilities going forward. A process I found worked pretty well was focus on not what's not working, focus on what's working. Focus on what's working within your business and what is actually true and positive about your business, about your customers, about your staff, what is actually true and positive, and build on that. That is always a great starting point. A lot of businesses did that in America through the GFC as well. It really does work. The other thing, think about possibilities. Your businesses are likely to change shape the way you do business. And I love mind maps. Mind maps are a great way of teasing out ideas. Be practical about what you can actually achieve. You'll have a million things to do, but really try and be practical about what you can achieve. In the recovery phase, one of the things I found in the bushfires, when people go through something like this, I lost count of the number of people who said to me, Bruce, before the fires, I thought this was important. Now, I believe this is important. Their focus changed. So what is really, really important to you, to your family? What have you learned? What will change? What does your business look like in the future? Now, one thing with that, I mentioned the Marysville Caravan Park, Ken and Christine Adams, and they know I'm telling this story. They owned a motel and home in Marysville, both burnt down in the fires. They lost close friends in the fires. About a week after Marysville opened, the council said to them, look, would you be prepared to take over the Marysville Caravan Park? They thought about it for 3 days. They'd never run a caravan park in their life. They said yes. I was asked to go up there a week after that and write a business plan for them. And I looked at them, I looked at the caravan park, and I thought, this is going to be a disaster. But I said to them, okay, what's your vision for the business? The next hour and a half, we walked around that caravan park. They described in minute detail what this caravan park was going to be like. And you could go up there, you could take that business plan and you could tick off every single thing in that business plan, bar one thing, which the council wouldn't let them do it. Why I mention it? These are people who are under the most horrible circumstances, and they were able to take that step back, look at the future, and look at what they were trying to create and create a roadmap to do it. And they're still running the business, although they've been closed down by the government. One thing practically, what's one action you can complete this week is really important. Finance, take advantage of repayment holidays. You're going to pay more interest, but you know, you're getting a monkey off your back for 3 or 6 months with the financiers. Really important. If you need to restructure, don't do it yourself. Get your accountant or finance broker involved. And importantly, when you meet with a bank, take them along. Advocates are really, really important. This couple of services to access. Every state has a small business commissioner. They offer a free mediation service. You're going to get into disputes. If you get into a dispute with someone, and particularly with big businesses, go down this path. You're not allowed to have lawyers there. It costs you a couple $100. They are worth their gold, these people. They really are. I've had a couple of really great outcomes with the small business commissioners. The financial counselling services. If you, family, friends are in real financial strife, get in touch with the financial counselling service. You go to the website, find a counsellor in your area. They understand the lender's rules. They achieved some amazing outcomes for clients of mine in the bushfires, really did. They're really worth doing. Contacting Small Business Mentoring Service. This is a volunteer not-for-profit. The mentors, experienced business people. It's like Rotary for Business. They join the service to give back to the community. It costs you about $100 a session. It's someone who's not trying to sell you anything, someone you can use as a sounding board for guidance to navigate through maybe some of the offers that are out there. They're experienced in disaster recovery. They're briefed around the disaster recovery. It is a really terrific service. And that's it. Inside 10 minutes, Russ.
Great work, Bruce. Great work as always. Okay, thank you, Bruce, for that and for your support for small businesses out there and medium businesses. Right, now I'm just going to remind my last panelists and presenters, we are on a very tight timeline driving towards our Q&A session. He needs no introduction. John Grimes is going to do a very brief share with us for a couple of minutes. Over to you, John, CEO of the Smart Energy Council, of course.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Russell. Russell, I might just relay some breaking news before I do that very briefly. So while we've been meeting on this webinar, the Prime Minister and the Treasurer have announced the details of a Job Keeper program. It's a $130 billion program over the next 6 months. If any business, if their revenue has dropped by more than 30% and a worker has been laid down, be it a full-time, a part-time worker, a sole trader or a casual, if that worker has worked for the company for at least 12 months, if that worker was on the books as of the 1st of March 2020, then they will be eligible for a Job Keeper payment. The payment will begin on the 1st of May and will be backdated to today's date. The payment amount is $750 per week or $1,500 per fortnight, depending on the arrangements. The worker needs to register with the ATO JobKeeper program. All of the details of this will be posted onto the Smart Energy Council website. We have a COVID-19 page where we're actually keeping up-to-date links of all of the breaking programs that are coming through government. So Bruce's advice to make sure you're aware of what's there to help you and access it, I think, is very timely. Russell, I don't want to take up a lot of time because that was unscheduled, but I would like to just share with people some work that we're doing on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we're holding a webinar, and in our view, probably the most critical thing that the industry needs right now is information on infection control in the field. This is a terrible virus. it can kill you. The way it kills you is that you drown to death. You don't want to get this virus. You don't want your workers to get this virus, and you don't want to infect one of your customers with the virus. So it's really important that everyone in the smart energy, in the solar, in the battery industries have the infection control information they need to operate safely. We're holding a free to attend webinar at 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 1st of April. You can register on our website, smartenergy.org.au events, infection control. You'll see the link there, smartenergy.org.au events, infection control. Free to attend. We've got a risk control and infection specialist coming, and we'll talk about how to stay safe in the industry. Thanks, Russell, and once again, fantastic initiative. Thanks,
John. Always great to have your input, and thanks for that latest update and for the webinar on Wednesday. Right, I'm going to move on to Durmus here, Durmus Yildiz. Durmus and I have known each other for many, many years. He has been in this industry for 20 years now, I think. He was a solar installer in Germany all those years ago, pre the year 2000. And he worked for Solar Sales out of Perth and WA before starting his own company, Solar Matrix, in 2007. Durmus, I purchased a lot of stock through Solar Matrix all those years ago. For those that don't know, I did have an installation, a retail design installation solar business for many years. I was self-employed for 10 years. And Durmus supported me in that, and then has since gone on to greater success as the managing director of BayWa. Durmus is one of the most understated and modest men I know in this industry, but also one of the most intelligent and knowledgeable. Durmus, I would love you to share your presentation with us and hear what you have to say about the supply chain and what you've learned through BayWa out of Germany. Thanks, Durmus.
Okay, thank you, Russell. Can you hear me?
Yes, can.
Okay, there you go. Just 1 second. Since you told everyone how old I am, just a sec, I'll prove to you. The main reason why I've given up Solar Matrix, so everyone knows, is because Russell bought so much stuff off me. I was scared of the warranty claims which are going to come. Now to my presentation. Yeah, thanks Russell for organizing this. Before you see lots more of my face, yeah, look, it is great, and I can put maybe a bit of perspective from a distributor / engineering company into this presentation. As you all know, we have various information flowing around about current supply chain issues, and then what this might mean for the solar industry in the future, and about collaboration and strategy going forward, because I think it will change our industry quite a bit, what is happening at the moment. I have the supply chain issues we have at the moment. There is various information about stock shortage and supply constraints. I think I can say, if you all speak to your suppliers, the shortage is, in my view, what we are experiencing, not as bad as it may sound like. It is okay, China is coming back online. I think it's more probably freight related issues more than manufacturer related issues. But again, that could be also more from my view of the products we are buying. The economic uncertainty, I think, is a bigger issue, which I see as a distribution business, because the business requires an amount of confidence to invest in stock and into their work to go forward. And at the moment, that is definitely not easy, as we have heard from Kane and Bruce, and also from Warwick. It requires quite a bit of guts at the moment to invest anything into a business, but hopefully we can all maneuver through this uncertainty. The Australian government is certainly trying to do quite a bit there to support us. The other matter, I think, is of an issue which was also raised by one of the listeners, is the impact of the Australian dollar I think it is a bit of a double whammy for the solar industry that the Australian dollar has dropped so quickly, so deep. That is not easy to absorb by many companies, and it needs to be monitored. So there is also from a wholesaler, I can give advice to everyone. There is room for wholesalers. Some of us hedge a bit longer, some not so long, but to maybe negotiate a bit for installers when they buy products. It is probably the time to help each other and not use the drop in the Aussie dollar to make a big buck. From a large-scale projects perspective, I do speak sometimes to the colleagues in the East who are more involved in the multi-megawatt projects. They do see this as a problem, but I think they are as equally scared of the red tape and the government involvement in curtailing output. So they have other risks as much as Corona plays a role and gives projects an uncertainty. But yeah, but the government still has other issues to solve in the larger project area. Future impacts in the industry. I think we have seen a massive growth over the last couple of years. As Russell said, I think I installed my first solar system in '98 in Germany, and that was some 80-watt panels. I came to Australia in 2000, and I think the market was somewhere 1.5 megawatts and mainly off-grid. If you look at currently, we are well above 2 gigawatts. That is really a massive increase and brings Australia to one of the largest solar markets in the world. That volume might need to be readjusted in the future. So that will be an impact. Will we have the same amount of manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers is another question. I think that it's probably unlikely that the market will remain the same. And what will the government do in the future, which I find another scary thing, because what was just mentioned, that we are pouring $130 billion in the JobKeeper, that money has to come from somewhere in the future. And I wonder if we have to kind of let go of blood as our industry to fill up the bank accounts again for the country. So it's something maybe which needs to be watched. How can we work together and collaborate? I think I have divided this into different participants in how to work together. For all of us, when we said about supply shortages, carrying diverse product and also increase your service offering, what Warwick said before, maybe just offer batteries, look at new opportunities out there, not just maybe concentrate on whacking solar panels onto the roof, is a very important part. That is apart from a collaboration perspective for companies. The next one is the public and politics. We need to provide certainty and confidence into the public that solar is a really good investment into the future electricity infrastructure in general, which was also mentioned several times before today. The media has a role to play in this whole situation, that the communication needs to be open and consistent, and honesty and transparency is very, very important. I think uncertainty comes from communication being not very clear, and we having lots of multiple media channels these days doesn't help either. So it's tricky for the public to understand what is right and not right. And last but not least, I think it's good to see that Russell brought the two industry bodies together, because I think we need to work together as much as they probably disagree on things. But right now, I think collaboration is important even between industry bodies. Yep, that would be from me. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we'll answer later. Thank you.
Thanks, Durmus. There will be questions at the end in the Q&A session. We currently have a list of questions that have piled up. Thank you for sharing. We will endeavour to get those answered for you at the very end. I'm going to move straight on to our next presenter, who is Dean Mannix. Many of you know and love Dean. He is a dynamo and an incredible sales trainer, presenter. He is a best-selling author, has presented on sales performance in over 25 countries around the world, and regularly presents at solar conferences. And he feels like he's very much tapped in on the front line of what is happening right now because of the contact that he has with those businesses. He's going to share a few ideas on his thoughts around the impacts of COVID-19 from a sales and marketing point of view. Dean, without further ado, I will hand over the presentation to you.
Thank you very much. And while that's loading up, I just want to say, I wish I could carry Bruce around in my pocket. It's fantastic to have people that are optimistic and aware and intelligent and know where you can get help from at the moment. I think that's really important for all of us. And I guess if there's one message I really want to pass on to all of you, look, I'm 51 years old. I've been very close, didn't quite go bankrupt, but very close to broke 3 times in my life and have found a way to bounce back. It's that all of you in this industry have an incredibly valuable set of skills in an industry that will keep moving forward. Now, we don't know when this period is going to end, but the bottom line is, as human beings, we know the world keeps progressing, keeps moving forward, and this industry is still incredibly well placed to be, a place where you can both help the world around you and earn a great living. So, guys, I know that right now it's insanely tough. It's really hard. It's hard to get motivated and excited, but there is a future. There is absolutely a future. Now, for those of you that are still out there actively selling, are trying to close out deals, are trying to obviously create some more certainty for your future in relation to just pipeline and what's going on, I put down some ideas around how do you sell in these uncertain times? What should you be focused on? For those of you that are not currently selling or are looking at your business and going, are we going to survive? What's going to happen? The next couple of months, even if we can't get on the roofs, and guys, in terms of not being able to get on the roofs, I can empathize. So guys, I do conferences. There's not a lot of conferences going on. I sell face-to-face training. There's not a lot of face-to-face training going on. I have accommodation. I own accommodation in 3 different cities, and all of that accommodation is currently empty. So if I can empathize with, wow, what happens if I can't get on the roof? But the bottom line is you've got to, reflect on what am I going to achieve in the next 3 to 6 months? What can I improve? And how can I make sure that I don't think things get back to normal. They never do. But as things get back rolling again, are you going to set yourself up to maximize that opportunity? Because a couple of things will happen. There'll be a lot of people not in the industry anymore. There will be a pent-up, a desire for supply, and you're going to have a real opportunity to absolutely get ahead of the curve. So, don't miss it. So, look, before I talk about the strategies, and the use of these strategies will change day by day as the government policy changes, understand the questions that you have to help a customer to answer in order for them to buy from you and to buy now have not changed. Sales is still the same, about the same 3 questions. We have to be good at helping people answer this question. Why do anything new or different? Why do I go from not having solar on the roof to having solar on the roof? To not having made a decision 6 months ago or 12 months ago about the solar that you pitched to me, to actually making a decision today. To not producing my own energy as a company, to actually considering producing energy as a company. So we still have to sell the concept of solar really well. We need to be making sure that we can then sell why do it with us and why do it our way. And a lot of the conversations that we've been having out there with different companies around how to sell quality versus price, well, this is where that really comes into play. So we have to convince people to buy solar, then we have to convince them to buy it from us. But there's no point in answering those 3 questions if we don't answer the third one, which is why do it now? Because if we can't convince people to buy now and to act now, we go broke. We speak to lots of people, we get them excited about solar, we put lots of quotes out there, but nothing happens. So that hasn't changed. I really want to make that point. The fundamentals of putting your sales process together and the conversations you need to have with customers are exactly the same. But what has changed is the way that they're processing information and the way that they're making decisions. So the reasons that people are going to say a yes or a no have changed, and that's because of the uncertainty in the market. Uncertainty in the market and uncertainty around us at the level that we're experiencing radically changes the way that we think about making decisions and what we go seeking before we can make a decision. So as I give you these strategies or ideas, just think about them as buttons that you're pressing in the customer's mind that make it more likely that they're going to say yes, not guaranteed closes, not guaranteed objection handling strategies, just strategies that we can use to basically increase the probability of a yes and decrease the probability of a no. Now, the first place we've got to go is we've got to understand people's desire for certainty is at an all-time high. The number one thing people are desperate for is certainty because they are surrounded by so much uncertainty. I don't think, you know, if I think through the GFC, if I think through all the other financial crises that we've been through over the years, I'm 51 years old now, you know, have been working as a lawyer and then in the commercial markets and globally in the sales performance markets, mainly financial services for, you know, 33 years now. I don't think we've ever experienced this much uncertainty. So if you can provide certainty when you're selling to people, you will increase the probability they will say yes. You need to be more focused on creating certainty than ever before. So here's just some quick ideas. Certainty of the herd. So when other people are doing it, people feel more certain about doing it. In fact, they feel less certain about not doing it. So just letting people know that lots of other people are speaking to you. Other people are taking action. Other people are buying because they're sitting at home just like you, and they're trying to get some of these projects out of the way because they've got more time on their hands and they're thinking more about the house than they have before. Interesting one, I have a client who sells paint. They are doing record months. I'm attached through a couple of clients into Bunnings numbers. Bunnings are absolutely smashing it. People are more focused on their home than ever before because the ability just to make a little improvement around the home or do something in the home is making them feel better about life. Certainty of installation. Now this is going to change on a business by business, government policy by government policy basis, but I just thought I'd share a few ideas. You might agree, might not, but supply from China, you know, just explaining supply from China has obviously been impacted, but I've got specific equipment and stock that I can allocate to your install. Just adding that into the conversation, as in I can give you the serial numbers of the equipment we're going to put on your roof and on your walls, will create significantly more certainty because they're probably hearing from other people that supply chain has been impacted. And I echo the comments from Durmus and others that I think that the supply problems that are getting pitched out there are much bigger than they are, and definitely the conversations I've had with Liam Ricketts at Supply Partners suggest that there is plenty of stock out there if you go looking for it. Now, this one's a bit controversial given the conversations today. Because we can install with just 2 people, we're feeling confident about being able to install over the next few months. Big point here, never lie, never ever lie. And if you don't feel certain about that or you don't feel confident about that, don't use this strategy. Certainty of installation, we're installing them today within the government social distancing guidelines. You might say we've got a policy in place, I can give you that policy. And so look, you know, there's a really good chance that we will be able to get it on the roof. And even if we can't, all the stock will be there, everything will be ready to go. And as soon as the limits are removed, we'll be on your roof installing so you can get those power bills sorted out straight away. But notice the tone in my voice. If you don't sound confident, you don't feel confident, you won't create confidence and therefore you won't create certainty. In the same way as creating certainty improves the probability of a yes, if they're uncertain about something that relates to not having solar, then that will make them flee to certainty in terms of buying solar. So uncertainty of the future. Look, if people are at home and using power during the day, what do you think is going to happen to the cost of power? Having that conversation with them. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to the cost of power. I know that historically, when more people are at home and more people are using power, the costs go up because I understand the basics of the power market, but I don't know whether the government's going to come in to sort of regulate that quite dramatically. But I think throwing that question into their mind will create a level of uncertainty about the future cost of power, which increases the probability they'll take some action and actually get control of their power bills by putting solar on their roof. And I should contextualize that, guys. I really believe everybody should have solar on their roof because it stacks up. So I feel confident about saying that. If the Aussie dollar continues its current trend, the cost of panels, inverters and other equipment is likely to, it's going to go up. I mean, and you should be able to have that conversation. When I was buying equipment last year and we buy it in, you know, we're exposed to the US dollar. We were buying it, the Aussie was at 71 cents this time last year. And right now it's at 61 cents off a low of 58. So the bottom line is the trend is not on our side and therefore getting access to equipment now makes a lot of sense. The rules of financing are changing week by week. So look, it's worth getting your approval done right now. I had a good conversation with Guy from EnergyEase before, and I think a really couple of valid points there is that they are very much open for business. They are very much doing finance. Now, right now in this time of uncertainty and people wanting certainty, talking about the ROI of a solar plant on their roof is not going to cut it. No one wants to hear about that. What they want is certainty of paying lower bills. And so talking about your bill is this now, and it will be this if we put it on the roof and finance it, is going to have much more impact than it previously did. So you should be able to have that conversation. Another thing is, what if we could defer your power bills for 3 months? Now, for a lot of people, that's going to be way more attractive than it was 2 or 3 months ago. And Guy can structure up an agreement so that it's a 63-month agreement, no payments for the first 3 months, and that gives people a head start over the uncertain period that we're facing. So there's lots of things we can do with finance that will make it more likely that people want to move forward and feel more certain. If you don't understand that stuff, please speak to Guy. The other thing people are really yearning for in this time is a sense of control, a sense of choice, because they feel like their control and their choice has been taken away from them. You think about it. I don't have control over so many aspects of my life because I don't know whether I'm going to keep earning a living. I don't even have control over what I do with my day because so many things are limited to me. And I might not even have the choice to leave my house soon. And so anything that I can do where I actually experience control or choice makes me feel really good at the moment. So simply saying to people, look, this is one of the few decisions that you can confidently make in the current environment, gives them a sense of control and choice. And there's a high probability that trigger will make them say, yeah, you're right. Let's just do it. And the other desire that people really have for the moment is advancement, because everyone feels like they're going backwards. And look, if you feel like you're going backwards right now, welcome to the club. It's a very big club and pretty much everybody's in it. But if you can make someone feel like, well, this is something you're going to advance on, then they're highly likely to respond in a positive way. So just talking to them, saying, look, mate, when so much is going backwards, it's really good just to do something that's actually improving the value of your home and reducing your power bills. So why don't we just get this done? So I'm not sharing these with you as, cheeky tactics or nasty closes or anything like that. They're conversations that will create a much more emotional reaction and response in people and make it more likely that they'll feel positive about moving forward. So as I said, the questions haven't changed. We still need to sell solar and the value it has for your commercial or retail client. We then need to sell them on doing it with us and doing it our way. And if you're not confident about that, you need to get confident about it. And if you're going to be forced into a 2 or 3 month shutdown, that's a great time to really get that right. An absolutely fantastic time to nail the marketing side of your business, because remember, the quality of your business is defined by the quality of the sales machine that supports everything else in your business. And so the questions haven't changed, but the reasons people are saying yes or no have. So pay attention. That's me checking out. I will just stop sharing there, and I'm going to hand it back to Russell to handle the Q&A session.
Dean, wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Always dynamic, always informative. Yeah, fantastic. And just as an extension of what Dean said, clarity is power, right? So if you get incredibly clear on what the outcome is that you're seeking in this situation with your business, yes, you might have to downscale a little bit, but if you get incredibly clear and create a plan around the steps that you need to take next, as Bruce was saying, what's the 1 week step? What's the 1 month? What's the 3 month? Create a plan, create a strategy, be flexible and pivot. Be incredibly flexible around pivoting your approach. And right now, there is no greater time to actually double down on marketing efforts and getting a really clear, compelling story that you tell your customers and a point of difference to what you're telling your customers right now. So clarity, create a plan, and then take massive action around that. There will be businesses, unfortunately, that will fall by the wayside. And we all know what that is like. We've gone through the ups and downs in this industry. But for those of us that are finding the strength to keep on pushing through, you will find a way. I've been working 7 days a week, as many of you are, and I've found a way over the years, many times with the businesses that I've had, to push through and find that seventh gear and keep on driving forward to find the energy to push on, especially during the solar coaster. This is not the first time that we've had a challenge on our hands, and you do all have the strength to reach out, get the support that you need, and keep on moving forward if you so desire. It is scary, but you can create certainty, as Dean said, in your messaging and in your own physicality and in your mind about how you approach your customers. Okay. Now, the Q&A session, we're going to kick that off right now. I will just share my screen again. Here we are. Okay, Q&A session. Now, we've had the questions pouring in. I'm going to kick one off with Kane. Kane, if you would be so kind to join us, from Liam Ricketts, who we all know at Supply Partners. Kane, you mentioned that the essential service definition of electrical works and thus solar installs may be redefined in coming hours or days, where solar may be redefined as discretionary. Can you please elaborate on this?
Thanks, Russell and Liam. It's a good question. Look, we're in a situation where the definition of essential services is different in every state and territory of Australia. It is right now. And what we're seeing is a trend towards governments putting more restrictions on industries. At the moment, well, there's a possibility down the track that they will make a decision which is all business activity must be restricted unless it is classified as an essential service. Now, what exactly that means in each state and territory is a bit unclear at the moment, and as I said, it does differ. Now, I think if someone is running a business for the purpose of keeping a power station operating, I think that quite clearly is an essential service. If someone was undertaking urgent maintenance on a power station, and one could define that as a rooftop solar system, then that may possibly be defined as an essential service. If you were installing an off-grid system for a householder, for example, that was affected by bushfires, then I think it would be relatively straightforward to define that as an essential service. What is unclear at the moment is if you were installing a solar system into a house that's grid connected, is that classified as an essential services and a non-discretionary activity? And my suspicion is that would be a hard justification to make. The CEC is working hard to make sure that governments are very clear on this in the circumstances, which I think are increasingly likely that they'll move to much stricter requirements on businesses. So watch this space. It is unclear, but we're pushing hard to make it clearer in days ahead.
Thanks, Kane. Thanks for your response. Warwick, I believe you may be going to answer this question for Kenchana Pereira. How do you see the impact on the C&I sector? Do you expect the impact to be different to the residential sector trends? Warwick, have you got a response there for us?
Yeah, look, I think because there's some urgency to the first round of the business stimulus package, then you could see actually a higher uptake in business commercial solar. The issue, of course, is electricity consumption patterns may have changed or will change if there are shutdowns. So the extent to what that solar is actually doing immediately for cash flow may be dampened, but suffice to say, you should be still able to say, hey, this is cash flow positive even before the tax breaks. And another question came in about stage 2 of those tax breaks, which extend out to June 2021. And at that point, I think you're getting a 50% write down rather than 100% write down. And so there's still some benefit and some urgency to leverage for the future. But for those reasons, I think commercial solar could have a greater sales impetus.
Okay, thank you, Warwick. Question for Durmus. There's been lots of great chat in Durmus's direction on in the chat line. Durmus, do you forecast demand to drop significantly sorry, my chat is moving, in the next 3 months? Do you forecast demand to drop significantly in the next 3 months?
Yeah, I saw that. That was Albert's question. Look, I want to share Warwick's optimism for the commercial sector. I hope it stays like that, Warwick. I think it might actually be dampened, but I think from what I hear, which we deal more in the residential side, is that a lot of home visits are being cancelled, which again goes back to the other presentation before from Dean to maybe learn also to sell over the phone, and same for you, for Warwick. So I think, but in general, there will be a drop in the vicinity of 20-25% of demand. Just to go back to another thing which was mentioned by Kane, for off-grid system, we had a customer with a very large off-grid system, which was for a community, an Aboriginal, which was cancelled due to the fear of the virus. So there are obviously conflicting not messages, because what Kane said is true, but also sometimes there are other factors which probably play a role when it comes to commercial, where maybe the health of a community is more important, and then utilities stop an installation or say we delay it to next year. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Durmus. Dean, I have a question for you that I'm going to direct in your direction. We're currently still getting, this is from Eric Prasetio, we're currently still getting commercial solar leads by leveraging the phone and online platforms. Yet, can anybody comment on increasing commercial solar leads, given that biz owners now tend to have other pressing priorities? Dean, have you got any response in that direction?
Yeah, I think it's probably understanding that you're absolutely right. They're going to have pressing priorities for the next 1 to 2 weeks, but then a lot of them are probably going to have more time on their hands than they've ever had before. So you'd have to look at that in an industry by industry perspective. But I would suggest that I'd be going very, very hard to get back in front of them on the phone, just to say, look, I know you can't talk to me right now, but let's put something in the diary for 7 to 10 days away, because this is going to be part of your comeback package. And come up with some sort of phrase or terminology that makes them think, yeah, you're right, I'm going to have a comeback strategy and you should be part of it. You could also have another strategy, which might be, look, if you're going to have downtime, then that's one of the best times that we could be basically scoping this out or putting stuff on the roof. So please don't shelve me. Let's just talk about the next phase of this conversation. Give me 20 minutes next week. That's where I'd go.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Yeah,
so I'd add to that, Russ, and just say, if you missed it in my presentation, all of the people you've ever contacted, all the businesses over the past 3 years that didn't go ahead, now's a good time to hit those people up. Then beyond that, of course, there's the yellow pages, but you'd want to be targeting industries that are not so COVID affected, and perhaps those that are easiest for you to service.
And if we can install before 30 June, I'm not an accountant, but basically with the government write-off this year, having a strategy to try and install as fast as possible may actually make a major impact to your taxable revenue next year.
Yeah, fantastic. And also, I have put a blog post up on the Energetic Consulting website this week, energeticconsulting.com.au, about, from my accountant, actually, some tips and advice around support that is available right now from the government, and some templates that you can use to have conversations with your staff around some of the challenges that you're having, but just some of the latest information around the stimulus package. Bruce Hall. Bruce, if you can get yourself ready to answer a question. Brian Nowakowski has said, we have rung the government and we have been told that all is okay, but obviously that could change at the drop of a hat. Now, you know that better than anyone, that this is changing by the minute. Have you got any advice back to Brian about the constantly changing environment?
Yeah, look, it's probably, if you sort of go back to that first slide I put up, we're in a phase at the moment where information is coming out like every hour. Something's changing, something's being introduced. To some extent, governments are taking advice, responding to situations as they arise. But I think it's going to keep changing, probably for a couple more weeks at least. So my sense of this is I'll be looking at it probably. I'm looking at what's coming out. But I'll be looking in, say, 2 weeks' time. By then, I think most of the major initiatives will have been announced, and we'll be in that phase, where that stabilisation phase, where the major initiatives have been announced, and then that's when we say, okay, let's have a look at this. What can we do with this? How do we access that? But yeah, look, it is a changing feast. Like I'm looking at this thing, multiple times a day, trying to get my head around it, but I'm reluctant to take a lot of action on it because you're seeing part of the picture at the moment.
Yeah, and it's constantly changing. So thanks, Bruce. Thanks for your words of wisdom in that direction. I have a question from, let's see. Anonymous, does anyone have a gut feel for PV installations as an essential service if we do go into stage 3 or 4 lockdowns? And, you know, obviously these businesses are trying to schedule jobs over the coming weeks. Perhaps Kane, you might have a response there.
Yeah, Russell, look, as I said before, look, I actually think it will be unlikely and difficult that an installation of a new rooftop solar system would be classified as an essential service. Certainly, we've made representations of government that we like it to be. And of course, that's with the provision that the installation would be done safely and consistent with the social distancing and other requirements. My sense at the moment is that it's unlikely that it would be able to continue should government move to the full essential services restrictions, but we'll be continuing to work, make sure that government's very, very clear on that over the coming days and weeks, should they move to that full restriction.
And Kane, do you have any further thought? There was another question about that only 2 people, you know, being allowed to be out in public together at the moment, and obviously we're all trying to get our heads around what that means. Does that mean, yeah, only 2 people can work on an installation?
Look, that's a bit unclear to me. I mean, clearly the social distancing requires put some limitations and constraints on how many people can be on a roof and how close they can be to each other, etc. My sense is that the further restrictions probably do limit the number of people at a household doing an install to 2, but that's a bit unclear to me just right now.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
And I should note, I mean, each state and territory has obviously their own WorkSafe entity who I think are working hard to try and provide as much clarity as they can. So I'd refer you to those bodies as well.
Okay. John Grimes, if you're able to join the conversation, John is back on the chat. John, will there be an online battery course whilst we are in this downtime?
Sorry, an online what type of course?
Online battery course, some sort of training course for battery installation?
I'm not familiar with the term battery installation, so I'm not sure what that is.
Batteries, energy storage, batteries?
Oh, batteries. Sorry, mate. Sorry. Yes, I think that just as, you know, all of the businesses on this call need to be pivoting to new delivery and new business models, so it's certainly true that the training sector, and in fact, the support that the peak industry bodies like the CEC and the Smart Energy Council provide needs to pivot to be made accessible online. And so I think there is a great opportunity for providing professional development training, capability training, and keeping people up to date with their skills and so forth during this period where actually they're going to be locked down. So, you know, they may well have that time on their hands, and I think that would be time well spent.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, thank you, John. I know we've gone over time here. We still have almost 250 people online with us. A few have dropped off. I might just answer or put a couple more questions to the panel. Our friend George Faney at Yingli has asked, how about industry guidelines, government health checked, detailing how to install solar safely in the current environment? Kane, I might point that back in your direction.
Yeah, Russell, look, that's something, as I said, the challenge at the moment is that the guidelines and restrictions are changing very rapidly at the moment. They are different in each state. Look, certainly the CEC put out advice to all installers in the country late last week with a set of guidelines that we suggest installers follow. I think we'll probably keep that updated regularly as a way to help installers understand what is appropriate practice. I expect we'll do another update in coming days, and hopefully, and I think particularly to Bruce's earlier point, we're in a period of a lot of change, and I know that's makes it very difficult for industry and installers in particular. I think as soon as we see a little bit of stability come back, I think there'll be a lot more work done to make life as simple and clear as possible. So watch this space. If you're an installer, we're keeping you updated very, very regularly, and we'll give you another update as soon as the latest, as soon as we've absorbed the latest requirements around safe installation practices.
Yep, and just one more question for you, Kane, while we got you. Luke has asked, how do we get involved to support the CEC in developing solar incentive schemes through stimulus economic packages from the government? Is there any way that industry can get behind you in doing those, helping with the presentations back to government?
Yeah, look, sure can. And I think there'll be a time for that. I'm not quite exactly sure when. I think government's very focused on, sort of survival mode and supporting workers just right now. I think everyone might have seen, we put out a package of measures about a week ago. So if people have got comments or feedback on that package of stimulus measures, jump on our website. You can have a look at it there and do get in touch and provide feedback. And I think over the next couple of weeks, once we get through this phase, I think we'll really start to turn our attention to some more lobbying around that stimulus package, and we'd welcome industry support to get that out and for you all to make sure that gets shared with politicians and decision makers right around the country. So, I think our politicians know when it's time to really lean into the stimulus, that the solar industry stands ready to deliver that.
Okay, thank you, Kane. Warwick, I see you with Caleb there. G'day, Caleb. Maybe just one last comment from you. What is the best way for people to stay up to date with the latest trends, how the industry is tracking? I know you're all over the data. Have you got one last comment for the conversation, Warwick, to add about keeping in touch with the emerging trends?
Look, we do have a free service there called PV Insider that you can subscribe to. So from my website, if you can't find it, just send me an email, warwick@sunwiz.com.au, and we'll sign you up so you can keep track of everything that's going on.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks, Warwick. Dean, one last comment for you. How can people get in touch with all of the online programs and training that you have? I know you've got an extensive back catalogue.
Yeah, sure. Just Dean at deanmannix.com, or just go to deanmannix.com. And I'm actually sharing a lot of content around personal resilience and building personal confidence that I think people will find valuable. It was stuff that I trained and coached a lot through the GFC, so please check that out.
Fantastic. I just want to thank all of our presenters today, our panelists. Thank you to Kane Thornton, Chief Executive of the CEC, Warwick Johnston, Managing Director of SunWiz. Thanks to Bruce Hall, Finance Professional Business Consultant to many industries. We've got Durmus Yildiz from BayWa, Managing Director. We've got Dean Mannix, incredible sales trainer, presenter extraordinaire. John Grimes, CEO of Smart Energy Council. Thank you all. Thanks to all of, now, just so we know, we actually raised $6,000 in the end for Vinnies. St Vincent de Paul, we raised $6,000. Huawei came in at the very last moment as a platinum sponsor. Thank you, team at Huawei, for supporting the event. All of that $6,000, once all the funds come in from the sponsors over the next week, will get presented to St Vincent de Paul. And the reason why I chose that charity is because of my father. You may have seen the post on LinkedIn this week. My father is the president of St Vincent de Paul and the Southern Conference. I think it's the Cheltenham Conference of Victoria. My father is an incredible volunteer and philanthropist in that regard. And he has assured me that St Vincent de Paul actually take no administration costs, like zero. And I've seen the families firsthand that impacts, and that's why we're donating all of that money straight to the families in need through Vinnies. And I can assure you, they stretch every dollar. I have seen those families and the impact that it has, from cars getting fixed to food getting put on the table to children getting school shoes. I've seen those families through my father, and incredible work that Vinnies do. Again, event partners, Clean Energy Council, thank you. Solar Cutters, Smart Energy Council, platinum sponsors, the amazing Keisha and team at Fronius. We've got BayWa, Yingli, Solis, SMA, Fimer, Smart Energy Council, Energy Ease, Eco Generation. We have LGChem, Solar Analytics, AC Solar Warehouse, and OpenSolar. Thank you all. And lastly, a little cheeky plug, just a little one, that if anyone needs business support during this time, I am available. It is what I do. I'm a consultant to industry. I have 16 years of experience, marketing, sales, and business management support. Warwick and I are launching a new platform called SunFluence in the coming short period of time that will further support with plug-in for retail companies to support their marketing in an automated fashion. Plugins and fully automated, it's going to be amazing. And I also run Solar Social, which is normally a face-to-face event, which is not happening, and that's how we ended up on this webinar. So look, thank you one and all. It's been incredible. What a journey we've been on over the last period of time. Stay in touch, keep the conversation going, and we look forward to putting another event on for you shortly. Goodbye, one and all.